I'm Lee. I'm back for my final video in this October 2024 series of horror movie sweater knitting project videos that I've done weekly throughout October. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go back and watch the other ones. In the first one, I kind of introduced what the project is, and then I gave my progress each week and talked about the movies that I watched each week. So now I'm wearing the sweater that I made. I finished it. And I added pockets. Yay! I was unsure if I was going to add the pockets. I knew it was looking like I would have enough yarn. It was just a matter of if the placement made sense, if it made sense style-wise and comfort-wise and stuff. And I decided to go ahead and do it. And they're super comfy. And the I don't know, maybe it's me or maybe it's the bulky yarn. I feel like I'm not super great at setting in sleeves. Like the sleeves got a little bit kind of bulky, and when I raise my arms, they kind of get pointy here, which, I mean, it's fine because when my arms are down, they're fine. But when I put my hands in the pockets, it like stretches the shoulders, so that's even better. Anyway, I think it works really well with pockets. I think it works with the style and the comfort, and it's already like a real cozy sweater. The sleeves are a little extra long, so the sleeves kind of go onto my hands a little. So it's definitely like a wintry, chilly weather kind of sweater, bulky yarn. So the pockets are excellent. I'm really happy. You can see the inside there. I'm happy with how everything turned out. So here it is buttoned. It fits pretty darn perfectly. I'm really happy with the fit. I like the buttons I chose. I'll show a close-up of those. I got these buttons on Etsy from a button seller. If I find it, I'll link to it in the description. And I'll link everything. As always, I'll link my yarn that I used in pattern and everything all in the description also. So here's the finished sweater, and I'm gonna be a little bit different this week from other weeks. Since it's not just the stripes that go along with the movies. Previous weeks it's been like, oh, I knit all these stripes and each stripe is one movie. But this week it was all the finishing stuff and button band and everything. So it's not like a very clear one-to-one with like what was what movie. So I watched 8 movies this week, and I'll go through the sweater first and then I'll go through the movies next. All these videos have timestamps of like each movie I talk about and stuff, so you can skip around. So I ended last week at the top of the sleeves before the sleeve caps. So the sleeve caps ended up taking 2 movies. So the blue one here and the green one here were the first movie, and then the yellow top and the brown top were the second movie. And then I finished the sleeve caps, and then that was the end of all the individual pieces of the sweater. So then I washed all the pieces, laid them flat to block, and then let them dry overnight. So then, an extra day went by, and then the next night I started seaming, and I spent one movie doing most of the seams, shoulder seams, side seams, and one of the set-in sleeves. And then I just started the second one, and then I did another movie, did the other sleeve, and all the final ends weaving in, all the ends that were not along the button band edge, because I wove in most of the ends into the seams. So I wove in the ends on the side seams, shoulder seams, and then as I was knitting the sleeves in the round, I wove in the ends as I was knitting. So I just had to snip those off. So I did all the final end snipping and weaving, and then I picked up for the button band. So all during that one movie, I did a bunch of finishing stuff and picked up the stitches. Then the next night, I knit the button band, and the button band did end up taking 2 movies, because that 1x1 ribbing, especially like the 1x1 bind off, it takes so long for me. Anyway, I'm very slow with 1x1. So I kind of did one movie up through the buttonholes, and then a second movie up through the bind off. And the buttonholes placement and everything was according to the pattern, and the width of the button band was pretty much as the pattern was written. I did make a change because I'm using the bulky weight. I didn't want my buttons to have to be too huge. So instead of doing like the 2 stitch wide buttonholes that the pattern said, I just did eyelet buttonholes instead, because the bulky weight, eyelet buttonholes are decently big. So that would give me like the size buttons that I wanted. So that's kind of the only change I made with that. After I did the button band, like I said, the sleeve cap seaming was like a little bit wonky. So I did kind of a second block where I just wet like the shoulders and the sleeve seams, and I wet the button band, like most of the button band. And then I laid it flat to block to just kind of smooth out the button band, smooth out the shoulders. So I let that dry for another night. And then that brought me to my last night, which was last night. I spent one movie sewing on the buttons and doing the final ends weaving in, and got the sweater 100% done according to the pattern. So I could try it on, decide if I wanted the pockets, and then I decided that I did want the pockets. So these were true Afterthought pockets. No scrap yarn was placed or anything because I didn't know if I wanted pockets or not. So I decided where I wanted, I tried it on and decided on the placement. And then I placed safety pins at the two ends of where I wanted the holes to be. And then on each one, I snipped a yarn in the middle, snipped one strand in the middle in between the two safety pins. And then I carefully unraveled the yarn out to the safety pins. And there's really no need to worry about like everything unraveling unless you're using like a really slippery yarn, especially if you're using wool, especially if it's already been blocked. It's been blocked, the stitches are in stitch shape. They're not going to just magically unravel. So you can just pick out that yarn, reveal all the live stitches, and then get those live stitches onto a needle. I put the top row and the bottom row onto DPNs just to hold them in place. And then I knit onto a circular to do magic loop around the pockets. I knit across the bottom, and then I picked up one stitch in between the bottom and the top on the edge, in the corner kind of. And then I knit across the top and picked up one more stitch on the other side. So you end up with the top and the bottom and plus 2 extra stitches on the sides to close up holes. And then I just knit around and around and around. And the pocket bag is just knit around, and then I grafted the top and bottom together because I like grafting. You could also do 3 needle bind off, and then I kind of tried it on, and with the pockets just like that, it looked pretty silly and unfinished. I wasn't sure if like that would be enough to just have those like pocket bags as the pockets. But it looked bad. So then I added these little ribbed bits, and I used the same color as the inside of the pockets, which, in hindsight, like I could have used the same color as the sweater. Either way works. Anyway, I like how it looks. So I just picked up stitches along the bottom edge or front edge or whatever you would call it of that pocket bag hole. I just picked up across, and then I knit 1 by 1 rib for like 1 inch, maybe a little bit less than 1 inch, and bound off. And then I used the 2 ends to seam up the inch on the 2 sides. So that makes it look like a finished pocket. That quick little 1 by 1 rib. It changes it from looking like weird holes in your sweater that don't make sense to looking like official pockets. So there you go, Afterthought Pockets, little Afterthought Pocket tutorial for you. It was really easy. It was my first time ever doing it. I hadn't done it before. I love how it looks. I love how it fits. It's great. Now I want to go through all my existing cardigans and just like add Afterthought Pockets to all of them. It would be harder to do with cables. You'd have to make sure you find a row without any cable twists to unravel. You definitely wouldn't want to do it with like lace or anything, but my sweaters are just stocking it. Like, I kind of want to add pockets to all of them now because that worked out really nicely. And yeah, I mostly kind of winged it. I did look at one YouTube tutorial video to just make sure the way I thought it would work was how it would work. And yeah, you just snip one single snip, and then you just take it out and reveal the stitches, and there you go. So I think that's everything about the knitting part of the sweater. I think it's still not my favorite construction of sweater. I also don't enjoy the seaming, especially the sleeves. I don't enjoy doing that, and I feel like it's a little bit messy. Like when I do it is a little bit messy. So I generally knit sweaters that have either picked up stitches for the sleeves or raglan or round yoke or something seamless. So I think I do generally prefer that. But, you know, it's fun to go outside your comfort zone sometimes and try out a different construction. So I'm happy with how it turned out. So for the movies, I did watch 8 movies. I'm going to try to go fast through a lot of them. There's only a few that I kind of have more to say about. So the first one, for the first sleeve cap stripes, we watched a movie called Vamp from 1986. And it's yet another vampire horror comedy. We keep watching vampire horror comedies this month. There's been like so many now. But this one is it's like not super comedy. It's like it has elements of like a 80s teen comedy or like college, you know, frat bro kind of comedy, and then mixed with the vampire movie. It's pretty fun. It has a lot of like interesting or fun elements to it. The coolest part, the most interesting part is just like in the middle there, Grace Jones plays kind of the main vampire, and she's not even in it that much, but we're introduced to her at a strip club, and she's doing this like strip performance, but it's more of like an art performance art piece. Her body is painted by Keith Haring, like in real life, like not in the movie, but in real life, her body was painted by the artist Keith Haring. And the character is this like vampire stripper, and she's like doing this performance art with her body painted by Keith Haring, and it's like really cool and weird and doesn't make sense. And I loved it. It was that part was amazing. Like it looked really cool. I mean, it's just total like cool 80s performance art just in the middle of this weird horror comedy. So that was like definitely the highlight, and then the rest of the movie was like fun, enjoyable, good time. So I'd recommend that one for sure. It's streaming a whole bunch of places, so you can totally see it. And then the next one I watched to finish off the sleeve caps was a new movie that just came out this year called Azrael. So it's like a religious action horror. It takes place after like a version of the rapture has happened. For religious reasons, as part of the plot, the characters don't speak at all, like 0 dialogue in the entire movie. So the whole movie, you don't really know a lot of what's going on or who anyone is. There's no character development or anything because no one can talk. So you're just following the action. There's a lot of action, chasing, hiding, and fighting, and a lot of violence, a lot of bloody, gory fighting. So if you're into that kind of thing, I wasn't really on board for most of it. Like I just didn't really care about it for most of it. Kind of, the ending was like interesting. Like I'm not mad I watched it. So the next one we watched the next day while seaming is the 1979 version of Salem's Lot, which I bought this Blu-ray for $1 at a yard sale, basically because of the cover art, because I thought the cover art was so cool. I had never seen it. I didn't really know anything about it. Turns out it was a made-for-TV little like mini-series style movie. So it's 3 hours long, because it was like split into parts for TV. It's, from what I've read, I think people who read the book, especially if they read the book when they were younger, or who saw it on TV when they were younger, like have like a connection to it, where they have like kind of a nostalgia, or they have a higher appreciation for it, for the nostalgia, or for it matching the book, or the, you know, I didn't see when I was younger, I didn't read the book. So for me, it was kind of like very drawn out. I was like, oh, maybe if it was half the length and squeezed into 90 minutes, I might have liked it more. But it was very long, and not a lot happened for like a lot of it. Didn't love it personally. It's fine. And then the next one I watched while like finishing the last of the seaming and ends weaving, and then picking up the stitches for the button band, the one I watched for that was another new movie that just came out this year. It's called Die Alone, and it's streaming, I think I watched it on Hoopla through the library, like through my library card, which is cool because it's like brand new. It like just came out. So it went like straight to Hoopla, which is cool. So you can see it for free. The way I described this movie to some people I recommended it to was Memento meets The Last of Us, which I think is pretty straightforward. The main guy in the movie has memory issues where he has like a loss of like both short and long-term memory. Is kind of messy. So it's all about like his memory issues. The main like supporting character of the movie is played by Carrie-Anne Moss, who is the main supporting character in Memento. So I feel like that had to be intentional, you know. It's just so specific. And she's great, love her. And then it takes place in a post-apocalyptic future that's, zombie-esque type style situation. So it reminded me a lot of The Last of Us. It also reminded me of like Walking Dead and stuff like that, you know. But it has like a little extra similarity to The Last of Us because like plants are involved. Whereas in The Last of Us, like mushrooms are involved in like what's going on. So I won't get into any more detail about like the plot really. If you like those two kinds of movies, and it's a fun movie, it's a good story, it's interesting. It's not like super fun in the end because it's kind of dark and bleak. But I enjoyed it. I liked it. And then the next one we watched the next night while knitting the button band was from 1992. It's called Ghostwatch. So there's a lot to say about this one. I'll try to keep it brief. I would recommend, if you haven't heard of it and you're interested in horror movie history, found footage mockumentary, kind of like history of where that maybe started, like a big influence on all that type of horror now. If you like ghosty, haunted housey kind of stuff, definitely check it out. It's streaming a bunch of places. I'll list them. It's very easily available now in the modern era. And then go check out some YouTube videos that are like longer about the history of this because it's really interesting. So basically it was made by the BBC. It was a full like scripted mockumentary, but they hired actual BBC like presenters, like news presenters and people who the public knew as like real people, like not actors. They hired them to like be the actors in the movie, the presenters and the journalists and stuff in the movie. So it felt extremely real. It didn't feel scripted to people watching on TV. So at the beginning they said, you know, written and directed by, and like a disclaimer that it was fake, right? At the very beginning, but you're flipping channels and you're not going to see the beginning. And there's no internet, obviously, 1992, so you can't go on Twitter and see what the deal is. So everyone who just like tuned in assumed it was real. And it's a ghost story about a haunted house, basically. And people flipped out. There was a phone line to call that was part of the mockumentary, was like callers, like scripted callers, but they had the phone number that you could actually call. They had an outgoing message for people who called that said it was fake, that were like, hey, thanks for calling, it's fake, it's scripted. But like there were so many calls that the phone line like broke and people weren't getting that message. It just like didn't work. So yeah, so do some research and learn more about it. It's really interesting. Definitely watch it. It's like a time capsule. It's, you know, it's not the scariest or wildest or most inventive like haunted house story ever, but watching it from the context of knowing at the time that people thought it was real, it's pretty wild. And yeah, a lot of like kids saw it and then were like inspired to get into filmmaking, and you know, it was very influential. Oh, and they like didn't re-air it at all because they kind of like got in trouble for like tricking people and scaring people too much. So it was just kind of like lost to people's memories for like over a decade, and then it was like bootlegs, and finally in more recent times it got like a physical release, like a Blu-ray release, and it's available streaming a bunch of places now, but it like wasn't available for a long time. It was just like a thing that people remembered and, you know, talked about and stuff for a long time. And then the next one I watched while like finishing up the button band, I think I won't talk about much. It's called The Ranger. It was like an indie horror movie from a few years ago. I didn't love it, didn't hate it. It was fine. It had some interesting characters who then turned out to like not be very well developed, it had like an interesting kind of mysterious setup that kind of ended up going in places that weren't that interesting in the end. So it was just kind of a standard slasher kind of thing that had like some interesting elements. And then the first one I watched on my final day of work, that the sweater where I sewed on the buttons and got started on the pockets, was this one that I rented from the library. So it's called A Cure for Wellness. It's from, I think, 2016. This is an interesting one. So it's by the director who did The Ring and then, like, I think 3 different Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So it has, like, a big Hollywood blockbuster kind of budget, and, like, elements of it are, like, kind of big Hollywood movie kind of elements. But then, like, other parts of it are very, like, weird indie. Like, I don't know, it felt like it was, like, multiple different movies, like, mushed together. It was, like, trying to be different movies in different parts or different scenes. It was, like, a lot going on. A little bit hard to piece it all together. I felt like it had a lot going for it, and then, like, the way it all came together in the end, I was, like, not a big fan. It was, like, interesting enough that I'm not mad I watched it, but, I didn't really like it that much. And then the last one I watched while finishing The Pockets, last movie, Halloween Eve, we watched Trick or Treat. So a perfect Halloween Eve movie. I had never seen it before. This one is, you may or may not have heard of it. It's like kind of a cult Halloween movie. It's like listed as 2007, but I think it, like, played at festivals maybe 2006 or 2007, around there, at, like, horror movie festivals, but then it didn't get a release. I watched a YouTube video that, like, got into more detail, but it basically just, like, they didn't think it was going to make money, so they didn't release it for, like, a couple years, and then I think it got, like, a straight-to-video release, or, like, a really small limited theater release. So the studio just kind of, like, decided not to deal with it. But then it became this, like, cult Halloween movie. I weirdly found the DVD, like, on sale super, super cheap at Barnes & Noble. So don't forget about Barnes & Noble if you want to get into DVD and Blu-ray collecting. Also, Barnes & Noble, by the way, has, like, Criterion and Kino Lorber and all kinds of good physical media distributors. But they also will weirdly have something like Trick or Treat for sale for, like, $3.50. So definitely worth browsing. So the deal with this movie, it's like a Halloween anthology, but they call it an anthology, but, like, the different stories of the anthology are all connected to each other, and they'll kind of dip in and out of each other. So it's more like just like a movie about all the stuff that happens in this one town on Halloween, that like multiple different things happen. It goes from one to the other. Definitely, like, inspired by anthology films for sure. It feels very inspired by, like, kids horror / Halloween kind of content, like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, like Disney, Nickelodeon kind of Halloween-y. It definitely has, like, tones that are like those things, but it's very R-rated. You know, it's a full horror things happen. It's dark, but it has this, like, tone to it that kind of makes it feel lighter. So I've seen people say that's a good, like, gateway horror for people who aren't really into horror. You want a Halloween horror movie but you're not a horror person. It's like, you might like it. If you're like, ooh, I want Halloween scariness, but I don't want to, like, actually be scared. Like, it definitely has, like, kills and scary things that happen, but, like, the tone of it is kind of, like, lighter and more just kind of cheesy, but, like, in a very specific kind of way. It's fun. So it has like all the different stories, so it has different kinds of Halloween, like, things that happen, but it's all kind of tied together with, like, jack-o'-lanterns and trick-or-treating. And I'm glad I bought it. Like I said, I'd never seen it, so I just kind of blind bought it because I thought it would be a fun, like, Halloween DVD to have to, like, watch every couple of years, and I enjoyed it. So that's how I finished off the challenge. The project was with Trick or Treat, and then I was done. And then I just kind of, like, blocked the ribbing part overnight a little bit. So I had fun doing this silly project. This was my first time doing these kinds of YouTube videos. These like talking to you, like vloggy videos. I'm not sure if that's what you would call it. Knitting video podcast, but with lots of movie talk too. Kind of its own weird mishmash of knitting and movies. I don't know if that's something people like. I don't know. I would do it again though. I already have thoughts for a similar like at-home movie knitting project in March, because there's a letterbox movie challenge in March that I did this year and I want to do again next year, and I was thinking about doing a movie knitting project and then maybe doing videos with that, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you want me to do. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and then whatever I end up doing, you'll see. If you like these like, I'm not trying to be a YouTuber. I'm not trying to make money on YouTube, so I feel silly even saying this, but if you like these videos, like, please do hit the thumbs up so I know, because like, if people hit the thumbs up, then I'll know that you liked it and I'll maybe do more. And if like nobody hit the thumbs up, then I won't spend the time doing more probably. I don't know. We'll see. I just like, I want to get a sense of if people have fun with this kind of stuff. Yeah. So subscribe, see what I do. Tell me what you want me to do. Tell me ideas that you think would be fun. We'll see. Okay, happy Halloween! If you're watching this, hopefully this will come out on Halloween. I'm recording the morning of Halloween, so it depends how long I take to edit it. And, or happy shortly after Halloween. Don't forget to vote if that hasn't happened yet. And I'll see you next time, whenever that is. And Carl will see you next time too, whenever that is. Bye!